Take a moment to imagine this scenario with me. It's a beautiful morning, you've got a good night's sleep, you're already had a nice warm cup of coffee, and all indications point to this being a beautifully perfect day. You hop in your car to run a few errands or maybe make your morning commute to work, and before you've made it 2 blocks away from your house, your demeanor has completely changed to something a little like this. Why does this always happen? Why, under otherwise perfectly conditions, is driving such a frustrating experience? This could have been anything. Maybe someone cut you off, sped past you at breakneck speed. Maybe you got stuck in traffic or someone stole your parking spot. Who knows? But sometimes it just seems like everyone else on the road is involved in a coordinated conspiracy specifically targeting you. Like they all gathered earlier that day and developed a unified strategy to make your commute as miserable as possible. And as much as I do love a good conspiracy theory, there's no secret driver coalition out there to get you, and we're not living inside the set of The Truman Show. A quick side note, though, I do think that some of the Champaign-Urbana stoplights are out to get me, but that's another story for another day. Today we are focusing on the other drivers that are on the road. So if it's not a conspiracy, what exactly is the problem? And I think it's quite simple, actually. There's a statistic, you can look this up, 99.9% of all drivers are just terrible. They're absolutely terrible. This real stat, look it up, didn't make it up. I'm sure the individuals we have here tonight, though, are exceptional drivers. You're amazing drivers, maybe even better than Ryan Gosling's character is in Drive. But if you look at the person to your left, look at the person on your right, they're probably terrible drivers. Nice enough people, sure, perhaps even quite intelligent, but put them behind a wheel and every common sense intuition they have goes out the window. The driver's education program has failed them. They took one driving test ages ago, and that's the only formal experience they've ever received for driving these huge vehicles. And that's why I'm here tonight. I'd like to share with you a few methods that we, the good drivers of course, can employ to help re-educate the lesser drivers out on the road around us. And my mother's an elementary school teacher, and I've gleaned some teaching methods from her over the years and have tried to apply them to the bad drivers on the road. So let's take a look at a few specific examples here. First, we have the shoulder passer. You're stuck in a bit of traffic, it's backed up, moving slowly. This guy comes flying by on the shoulder like he's the only genius that figured out there's a secret third lane on the interstate. Not such a genius. So what's the best response that we can have here? The Jeep that you see has veered slightly onto the shoulder ahead of that driver, blocking him off a little bit. This is employing corrective teaching, a method wherein you show what they're doing wrong, you show that you care about their well-being, that's why you're giving them this lesson, but also show that there are consequences to inappropriate driving behaviors. You don't let them pass, don't let them merge in. Nice work, well done. Here we're looking at an improper signaler, of which there are 3 varieties: a driver who never uses their turn signal, a driver who leaves their turn signal on for miles, or a driver who only signals after they have completed their turn, which is not the most helpful. We also have, in the next slide, an improper cruiser. This is a driver who either sets their cruise control at the speed limit and hogs the left lane, or a driver who refuses to cruise control and will speed by you 1 minute, only to slow down a minute later, causing ripples of congestion. It makes no sense to me, which brings us to our next teaching method. And you might be thinking that this next image looks a lot like tailgating. I assure you it is not. I would never encourage a recklessly aggressive driving strategy like that. No, this is a well-established teaching strategy called proximity control. Just like a teacher remaining closest to the most disruptive students, we ought to stick as close to the disrupted drivers as possible. They become hyper-aware of the teacher's presence and the demanded standards, and they can also easily read our lips as we kindly explain how they can improve their driving. Next, we have a distracted driver. This person's driving down the street, maybe stopped at a stoplight. They're distracted. Maybe they're making a call, they're texting, they're catching Pokemon, I don't know. It's bad news, causes a lot of accidents. Or we have a left turn blocker, the folks who refuse to enter the intersection unless there's a mile-long gap in traffic. And as much as I love waiting through multiple light changes, it's horribly inefficient, and they can really back up traffic for a couple blocks. It's horrible, like right after I get off work, hate it. Or we have a right turn blocker, as you can see in the next slide, which is slightly less egregious than the left turn blocker, but also quite inefficient. Instead of waiting their turn behind the lines on the left, this driver wanted to get ahead of the pack, but in doing so, has selfishly blocked the poor cars trying to turn right and refuses to inch forward to allow them just enough space, to sneak by there to the right. So what educational method can we use in these cases? In the classroom, a teacher might use a verbal transition cue to indicate we're changing from one activity to the next. And in the car, we have the horn, and we can use this to create a Pavlovian response of sorts, so that if we use our horns as a standardized educational instrument, we can train bad drivers to hear a horn behind them, and out of conditioned reflex, they'll salivate, they'll realize their mistake, and they'll take corrective measures. It's perfect. I have one final, slightly more advanced teaching method to share, which will require some practice, but can be used in almost any situation. You know how when someone cuts you off or whatever, you just want to pull up next to them and see what they look like. So whatever prejudice you have can be confirmed. You want to be able to say, I knew that was going to be a cat driver, or I could tell a mile away that a cat was driving that car. And once you've pulled alongside them and can see what they look like, there's one crucial step remaining. It's a method that most mothers and any good teacher has perfected, and it's known simply as the look. When used correctly, the look is significantly more effective than any amount of screaming, wild gesticulation, or finger pointing will ever be. And it expresses that you're not angry, you're just disappointed in them. You're just disappointed. It cuts deep, but it gets the point across that you, sir, messed up. There are plenty more methods I'd love to share if I had the time, but that is drivers' re-education in a nutshell. So if you take only one thing away from this talk, it should be that you, a good driver, of course, can play an active role in the re-education of the bad drivers around you. That image is the kind of peaceful bliss I want to experience while I'm driving, but we're not quite there yet as a society. So let's start re-educating while we drive and make our roadways great again. Thank you.